Hey, what to do, y'all? What to do? Newsflash. Men aren't supposed to be providers. If you happen to be a first timer at my channel and you like my type of content, feel free to subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell so that you get all of my uploads in real time. And feel free to share my videos, including this one. Now, off to today's topic. Well, the thing is that society as a whole has gotten so far away from its genesis, its originality. But just looking up the word provider, I mean, there's a lot of different formulations of the word provider, but one thing that comes to mind to me most, that strikes me the most, is what's associated with provider is being a giver. Now, of course, yours truly is definitely a giver. I've always been a giver, and I believe in being a cheerful giver, as it is written. Okay? But of course, in this society, a lot of the feminine gender, a lot of these females take for granted a man's giving. Now, a woman, because I distinct female from woman, a woman appreciates a man's giving. Yeah, see the difference once again, before I was interrupted by the ambulance. A female does not appreciate a man's giving, but a woman appreciates a man's giving. Because I make the distinction between female and woman. But this brings out a lot of what I want to share with y'all today in regards to why men aren't supposed to be providers. Because, you know, I think, like, just with this idea of being a provider, it's become so overrated today. But, you know, you look back in civilization, you know, the previous civilizations and the way things were many years ago, many eons ago, per se, it was just more primal, you know. I'd say that modern civilization is uncivilized, if you ask me. Because, see, back then it was different. And this is what I mean. Now, what if I were to tell you that you're not supposed to be providing as a man, you're supposed to be just sharing? A man doesn't provide, a man shares. That's the way it used to be. And a lot of this sharing was further defined upon looking at lions. Where do you think they get the term lions share from? If you just think of this idea of what lion share is, it's just more or less the lion shares a majority of its kill, you know, but that's upon the lion eating first. And this was only if the lion chose to share. Yes, it was only if the lion chose to share after the kill. I won't get off into the habit of how lion hunts actually go, but that is key, that the male lion only shares when he feels it's proper or necessary. So when a lion shares, it's a very, very appreciative moment for the pride when a lion actually decides to share. And so I want men going forward to really put things in that context. When you hear everybody out there talking about that a man is supposed to be a provider, no, it's not that a man provides, a man just shares. Because you got to think, before a said female or woman per se met that man, he had what he had, you know, whatever he worked hard for in his life. And it was up to him if he wanted to share that with that person. Now, of course, upon him knowing that this was a woman instead of a female, he was willing to share. That became the woman in his life. Because he doesn't want a female in his life. He doesn't want a chick that's not trying to act like a woman and be a woman. What man would want to share with someone that's not trying to be a woman? That seems ludicrous, right? Now, it's just more or less, I think, just the idea of being a provider, like more or less just the word itself is outdated for these times, I believe, you know? So that's why I feel that hopefully what I'm saying is very important to everyone, that especially for a lot of fellas out there. You know, no longer do you need to be feeling like you have to respond to an entitled female who's not trying to be a woman when she says things like, well, men are supposed to be a provider. No, men aren't supposed to be a provider. Men just share what they've worked hard for. And you have to be someone that is worthy of him sharing those things that he worked hard for. You know what I'm saying? And he's only sharing with a chick that's proved herself to be a woman. That she's not out here acting just like another typical female who feels entitled by this idea that a man is supposed to be a provider. No. You might as well just leave that alone and keep dreaming about that. A man does not have to provide anything. And the way it was with the older civilizations, so I can wrap up this video here, even when the men went out to hunt, that wasn't the idea that they were being providers even in that situation. More or less what the men were actually doing is just making sure that they remained the protectors of their family. And so, yes, men had to go out and hunt to stay in tip-top condition. And the leftovers, they shared amongst the family, amongst the women, okay? It wasn't this idea that they had to provide for their family. Like, this idea of providing, just more or less just see it as giving, you know? Of course, the word providing will always stick around for those who antagonize men. Because in this society, this current civilization that I believe is very uncivilized, they see men more or less as slaves and as workhorses. So fellas, keep that in mind when you hear a chick tell you that she wants you to be a provider. She's actually saying that she wants you to be her slave. Last time I checked, I thought we were emancipated from that. I thought. But I keep hearing this word float around again. Plantation. So I guess with all that's been going on with the Me Too movement, and then you got all these other movements that a lot of men are doing as a response to the Me Too movement, this word plantation keeps showing up, right? Well, last time I checked on a plantation, there were slaves. And now this modern plantation that guys are talking about, the slaves have been replaced with providers. Of course, in the male spaces, the man spaces, guys like to say beta male providers. But no, a lot of these females out here, they just see a man as a provider, whether he's a beta male or not. So you could be an alpha male provider. You could be a sigma male provider if you want to go there with it, you know? But nevertheless, she's expecting a man to be a provider when really, as it is shown in history, it was never about a man being a provider at its core, you know? And I say at its core because yes, there have been deviations of men being enslaved to the feminine gender as far as his way of worshiping her and putting her on a pedestal, idolizing her, being used by her, being refused by her, you know, being abused by her. This has been accounted for countless of times. But in these times that we're living in, just know now when you see the word provider, also associate that with slavery. And that a man in his masculine is not necessarily trying to provide. He's actually just trying to share what he's worked so hard for. And it's only for a woman in his life that knows that she has been worthy of it, you know, that she's appreciative of what this man has worked hard for, and the fact that he was willing to share these things with her, that he was that lion that was willing to share his lion's share. Hopefully that makes sense to some of y'all. Signing out.